The smoke of battle still hung over the broken valley, drifting slowly like a ghost across the pale morning light. The ground was scorched, the air heavy with the scent of burned metal. Harris stood at the edge of the hangar's ruins, his arm bleeding, his coat torn, yet his eyes remained calm. The children were safe aboard Dax's ship, hidden beyond the radar field. But the Empire's troops still surrounded the area. He looked up at the sky. Dozens of enemy transports hovered in a slow circle, loudspeakers echoing his name. "Captain Harris, surrender immediately. Your actions are treason." He smiled faintly, his voice barely above a whisper. "If saving children is treason, then I'll wear that title proudly." On a nearby cliff, Rayleigh watched through the ship's window. Tears in her eyes, she wanted to run to him, but Dax held her back. "If he sees you safe, he'll fight stronger," he said, his voice rough with emotion. She pressed her hand against the glass, whispering, "He's not fighting. He's protecting." Down below, Harris activated his final transmission, connecting to every active signal beacon left in the system. His tired face appeared on countless hollow screens across the galaxy. Factories, schools, warships, and homes. "My name is Captain Harris," he began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "You've seen the camps, you've seen the children. Now you must decide, are you still human if you stay silent?" Across the stars, silence spread. People stopped working. Soldiers froze at their posts. Alien slaves in distant colonies lifted their heads. For a moment, everything paused. One man's words breaking through the noise of control. The Empire commander barked orders. "Cut the feed." But their systems glitched every time they tried. Harris's message reappeared, louder, stronger. "We were told that mercy makes us weak, that kindness is rebellion. But mercy is what makes us alive," he said, his eyes burning with conviction. Blaster fire exploded behind him, but he didn't flinch. The camera caught everything, his coat flapping in the wind, the sunlight catching his face, making him look like a figure carved from courage itself. From orbit, a massive ship appeared, the Imperial dreadnought Valiant, its cannons powering up. The commander of the fleet gave one last warning. "Harris, stand down or be destroyed." He raised his chin slightly. "You can destroy one man, but you can't destroy the truth." He tapped the final command on his wrist pad, sending every file, every image, every recording of the camps into the public networks. The data scattered through the galaxy faster than light. Impossible to erase, impossible to hide. The dreadnought fired. A massive beam of light tearing through the valley. Dust and fire swallowed everything. Dax's ship shook as the explosion flashed across the horizon. Rayleigh screamed, "No!" She tried to run, but Dax grabbed her shoulder, his eyes wet. "He did it, kid. He did it." Hours later, the smoke cleared, the valley lay silent. But Harris was gone. All that remained was his burned communicator and his badge lying on the ground. Still glowing faintly, weeks passed, and the footage spread everywhere. Riots and protests broke out, humans and aliens standing together for the first time in generations. The Council tried to control the narrative, but the truth was too big, too loud, too human. The movement that began from one act of kindness became known as the Children's Accord, a new law declaring equal rights for all sentient species. Statues of Harris and Rayleigh were raised in cities across planets, carved not in marble but in light. Years later, Lila stood on a peaceful meadow under twin suns. Now grown and strong beside her was Rayleigh, smiling, holding a small lunchbox still dented from long ago. "He'd be proud of what you did," Rayleigh said softly. Lila looked at the horizon where the stars shimmered. "No," she whispered. "He'd be proud of what we did." And as the sun set behind the hills, the galaxy remembered the man who had taught them one unbreakable truth. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can shake the stars themselves. Export message as PDF. The stars outside the shuttle window streaked into long silver lines as Harris's old warship broke through hyperspace. The quiet hum of the engines was the only sound. He sat alone in the cockpit, his face lit by the pale glow of the control panel, his hands steady, his heart heavy. He had left everything behind. His home, his job, his reputation, but his purpose was clear. He was going to find Rayleigh. On the co-pilot seat lay a small photo of Lila, smiling and holding her lunchbox. Beside it was a crumpled map Dax had sent him, marked with secret coordinates of an off-world detention base. The Empire called it Re-Education Center 7, but Harris knew what that meant. Slave camp. He landed on a forgotten moon, its surface gray and silent. Broken structures scattered across the wasteland. He hid his ship under an energy cloak and began walking toward a distant valley, wearing only his old soldier's coat. The wind bit at his face, but he didn't stop. Every step was driven by the memory of Rayleigh's frightened eyes. At the edge of the valley, he found the base, surrounded by electric fences and watchtowers, robotic guards patrolling in perfect rhythm. Through his visor, he zoomed in and saw the truth. Rows of alien children working in silence, their faces thin, their hands trembling, the smallest ones chained together as they carried crates of minerals. His jaw tightened, he whispered, "Monsters," then raised his wristcom. "Dax." "I see them," the voice on the other side crackled. "Told you it was real, Harris. You still sure about this?" Harris answered calmly, "I didn't come this far to turn back." Night fell. The camp lights glowed red, shadows moving like ghosts. Harris crawled through the outer perimeter, avoiding motion sensors with the precision of a trained soldier. When he reached the inner fence, he used an old war device, an EMP cube. Tiny and silent, he pressed it against the wire, and with a soft pulse, the power died. He slipped inside, blending with the dark, his steps light, his eyes sharp. From one barrack to another, he searched for her, until he heard a weak voice. "Don't move." It was a guard, his weapon aimed at Harris's chest. But before the man could react, Harris struck swift and silent. The guard fell, in the corner of the barrack. He saw her, Rayleigh, smaller than he remembered. Her clothes torn, her eyes dull. When she saw him, she froze, unable to believe. "You came," she whispered. Harris knelt beside her, gently removing her shackles. "I promised, didn't I?" he said softly. She started crying, silent tears running down her pale cheeks. "They said you were gone." Harris smiled faintly. "Humans are hard to erase." He looked around the room. Dozens of children were watching him with wide eyes, afraid to speak. "We're getting out," he said, his voice steady. "All of you." The children stared, unsure if it was real, until Rayleigh whispered, "He keeps his promises." They moved quietly through the shadows, Harris leading them toward the fence, his old instincts guiding every step. When they reached the gate, alarms suddenly blared. The guards had noticed. Searchlights swept the yard, red beams flashing through the darkness. Harris turned to the frightened children. "Run to the rocks, keep low," he said, standing tall to draw the attention. Blaster shots flew past him. He fired back with an old rifle he had taken from the fallen guard, his aim precise, calm, and deadly. As the children reached the outer path, Dax's voice echoed through his comm. "I've got your signal, pulling you out." "Brother?" A cloaked ship appeared above the valley. Lowering a ramp one by one, the children climbed aboard. Rayleigh last, looking back at Harris, shouting, "Come on." He smiled, sprinting toward the ramp just as explosions shook the ground. The gates collapsing behind him, the ship lifted off, racing into the night sky. Inside, Rayleigh clung to his arm, whispering, "You saved us." He looked down at her and said quietly, "No, you saved me." As the ship disappeared into hyperspace, the Empire's tracking systems flickered to life, flashing a single warning: "Human rebel active, initiate hunt order." The war Harris thought was over was only beginning. But this time, it wasn't for glory. It was for children who had no one else. "Export message as PDF, you said." The next dawn broke over a hidden valley on the outer rim, a faint light spilling through the clouds of dust and metal. Harris stood outside the old cargo hangar that now served as their refuge, his warship half covered with tarps, the rescued alien children sleeping inside on warm blankets. For the first time in years, silence felt peaceful, but short-lived inside the hangar. Rayleigh was awake, sitting near the small fire, clutching a cup of warm soup. Her eyes still carried the memory of the camp, the screams, the hunger, the chains. She looked up when Harris entered. "They'll come for us, won't they?" she asked quietly. Harris nodded. "Yes, they will, but when they come, the whole galaxy will see what they've done." He walked to an old control console, dusted it off, and activated his comm transmitter. Dax's voice answered, tired but steady. "You're insane, Harris, you know that." "The entire Empire's hunting you," Harris replied. "Then let them. I'm going to show everyone what they're hiding." He uploaded the footage from the camp, images of starving children, metal cages, guards laughing, and Rayleigh's trembling hands holding the broken lunchbox. It streamed through the old war networks, spreading fast, first through hidden rebel channels, then leaking to civilian feeds. By the time the sun fully rose, millions had already seen it across the galaxy. People were waking up to the truth. Alien families crying as they saw their lost children alive, Humans staring in disbelief, many whispered. He did what no one else dared. Some called him a hero. Others said he was a fool. But no one could ignore him anymore back at the hangar. The children gathered around a small hollow projector showing the news. One boy whispered, "We're free because of you." Harris shook his head. "You're free because you never gave up." But their moment of peace shattered when alarms blared. Dax's voice came through the comm. "Multiple ships inbound, Empire patrols. 10 clicks out." Harris looked up, calm but alert. "Time's up," he said. Rayleigh stood, her small voice shaking. "You can't fight them all." Harris smiled faintly. "I'm not planning to fight them. I'm planning to make them choose." He walked out into the open, the wind whipping through his coat. As the first wave of drones descended from the sky, soldiers in black armor landed, their weapons raised. A commanding voice shouted, "Captain Harris, you are ordered to surrender the fugitives immediately." Harris didn't move. He raised his wrist comm and tapped it once, activating a live broadcast to every network still open. His image appeared across thousands of screens, calm, unarmed, standing before an army. "These are children," he said, his voice steady but filled with fire. "They are hungry, scared, and innocent. And you call them criminals," the commander barked. "End transmission." But it was too late. Billions were watching. Harris kept speaking. "If the law says mercy is rebellion, then the law is wrong." The crowd of soldiers hesitated, many lowering their guns slightly. Rayleigh ran out from behind the ship, clutching the lunchbox she had kept. She stood beside him, trembling but brave. "He's not the criminal, you are," she shouted, her voice echoing through the valley. Cameras captured the moment. A human man and a young alien girl standing shoulder to shoulder against the Empire. The commander shouted, "Open fire." But the soldiers froze, uncertain. The world was watching. Some of them began lowering their weapons completely, whispers spreading even among the ranks. Suddenly, explosions boomed in the distance, rebel ships arriving. Dax leading the charge. "Told you I wouldn't let you die alone," he yelled through the comms. Blaster fire lit up the sky as the rebels and Empire forces clashed. In the chaos, Harris grabbed Rayleigh's hand. "Get the children aboard," he shouted, helping them onto the ship one by one. As he turned back, a blast struck the ground near him, throwing dust and light everywhere. He coughed, vision blurring. But when he looked up, he saw Rayleigh safe. Waving for him to run, he smiled weakly, whispering, "Not yet. Not until they're free." Then turned toward the battlefield again, standing tall as the camera drones hovered over him, his last broadcast still playing to the stars. And across the galaxy, millions of beings watched in silence, feeling something they hadn't in years. Hope real and alive. Born from one man's defiance and one child's courage. Export message as PDF. The next morning, the whole academy buzzed with whispers. Students huddled in small groups, showing each other hollow screens replaying the moment Harris gave food to the alien girl. It was everywhere. On the school network, the city feed, even the military bulletin. Some called him brave, others called him reckless. When Harris arrived to drop Lila off, he could feel the stares. Alien officers at the gate stepped aside, but not out of respect. They were afraid of what he might do next. His calm walk made them uneasy. Lila held his hand tighter, whispering, "Daddy." "Everyone's looking," he smiled faintly. "Let them look. They need to see what kindness looks like inside the cafeteria." Rayleigh sat in the corner again, but this time, a small paper box rested on her tray. The lunch Harris had given her yesterday, untouched. She had saved it as proof, not food, when she saw Lila enter. Her small eyes brightened just a little, but fear quickly covered her face again. A teacher approached Harris, voice low. "Captain, we appreciate your sentiment, but your actions have caused serious political waves. The Academy follows the Empire's code. You can't—" Harris cut him off softly. "Feed a starving child?" The teacher swallowed hard. "It's not that simple." Harris gave a faint smile. "It never is, until someone makes it simple." Then he walked to Rayleigh's table again. This time the cafeteria fell into complete silence. Every eye turned to him. He reached into his bag, pulled out another lunchbox and set it down. "Eat," he said simply. Rayleigh's small hands trembled. "They said you'll lose everything." Harris knelt to her level. "Then everything is worth losing." Gasps spread across the room. A few students even stood up. Unsure if they were watching bravery or madness, one alien boy whispered, "He's challenging the code." Another recorded every second. Knowing it would go viral, Harris sat with his daughter and the alien girl, calmly unpacking the lunch, the three of them eating together. No words, just quiet defiance. It was a picture that would soon circle the galaxy. A human soldier, his child, and an alien outcast sharing one meal. By afternoon, Harris's face was all over the Holo News. Headlines blazed. Human engineer defies the separation code. Reporters swarmed his building. Drones hovered outside. Some praised him as a hero. Others demanded his arrest. At home, Lila watched the news replay the footage over and over. She looked at her father nervously. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. Harris didn't answer right away. He poured her a cup of milk and said gently, "Doing what's right sometimes brings trouble, but never regret it." Outside, protesters gathered, half holding signs that said equality for all species, and others shouting, "Protect human purity." The world was dividing, all because one little girl shared her food and one man refused to say sorry. Late that night, Harris received a message from an unknown sender. The screen flashed red. It was Dax again. "You've started something big, brother." "The council's watching you," Harris replied. "Good. Maybe it's time they did." Dax hesitated before saying, "They're labeling you a sympathizer. They'll come for you soon." Harris looked toward Lila's room where she slept peacefully, then back at the screen, his eyes steady. "Then they'll find I don't scare easily." Across the galaxy, alien colonies whispered his name. Stories spread in underground channels. About a human who stood up for one of their children. About hope, about something long lost but suddenly alive again. And while most of the city slept, Rayleigh held the empty lunchbox close to her chest, tears rolling down her cheeks. She didn't understand why he risked everything for her. But for the first time in her life, she whispered into the dark. Maybe humans aren't all the same. Little did she know, the Empire had already sent their first warning. And the next sunrise would not come quietly. Export messages PDF the next morning. The sky above the city shimmered with silver patrol ships, their engines humming low, the kind of sound that made people stay inside and stay quiet. Captain Harris stood by the window. Watching them fly past, he knew what they meant. A warning from the Empire, a reminder that he had stepped over the line. Lila ran into the room holding her holopad. "Daddy, they're talking about you again," she said, showing him the news feed. His face appeared beside the headline, "Human Engineer Defies Galactic Law, Hero or Traitor." Harris sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "It was only food," he said softly, but deep inside he knew it was much more than that. A loud knock echoed through the apartment. Harris turned, his soldier instincts flaring instantly. Outside the door stood two tall galactic enforcers, armor polished and faces hidden behind glass masks. One of them spoke in a cold, metallic voice. "Captain Harris, by order of the Imperial Council, you are to stand down and report for questioning." Lila clutched her father's hand tightly. "Daddy, are they going to take you away?" He smiled gently at her. "Not if I can help it." He opened the door. "Calm as ever, gentlemen," he greeted. The enforcer held out a holo document glowing red. "You've broken Section 12 of the Separation Code. Fraternization and unauthorized contact with restricted species." Harris raised an eyebrow. "Fraternization? I shared lunch with a child," the enforcer replied coldly. "You shared rebellion, Captain." For a long moment, no one moved. The silence felt heavy, then Harris stepped aside. "I have nothing to hide," he said, letting them in. While one officer scanned the room, the other looked around, noticing Lila's small school bag and drawings taped to the wall. After their inspection, they gave one final warning. "You will make a public apology, retract your statements, and remind the citizens that the law must be obeyed," Harris asked quietly. "And if I don't?" The enforcer's visor flashed red. "Then you will lose your engineering rights, your home, and possibly your freedom." When they left, the room felt colder. Lila looked up at him, eyes wide. "You're not going to say sorry, are you?" Harris smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart." "Not for kindness," she nodded, hugging him tightly. "Then I'm proud of you." That night, the lights flickered again. A coded message appeared on Harris's terminal. Dax's voice came through. "Harris, they took the alien girl Rayleigh. She's gone." Harris froze. His pulse quickened. "Where?" Dax answered. "Rumors say they moved her to a transport camp outside the moon sector's classified location." Harris stood up, his hands clenched. "They punished a child." "For eating?" He stared at Lila's sleeping face, the city lights painting soft blue on her cheeks. he whispered to himself. They think fear keeps peace, but fear only feeds anger. He opened an old storage locker. Inside were his war relics, a broken blaster, a faded uniform, and his encrypted access badge from the Orion Rebellion. He took a deep breath. I hoped I'd never need these again. As he packed a small bag, the city alarm sounded in the distance, the Empire's curfew bell. He stepped onto the balcony, looking at the stars, each one a reminder of worlds he once fought to protect. The next morning, the Galactic Council made an announcement across every holo channel. Captain Harris of Earth is hereby suspended and under watch for subversive acts against the Empire. But Harris wasn't watching. He was already gone. He left a note on the kitchen table for Lila. Written in calm handwriting, I'll come back. Stay strong. Feed those who are hungry, no matter what they say. And far away, deep in a hidden base, Rayleigh sat alone in a cold cell, holding the same small paper from her lunchbox, whispering his name. Harris, her voice trembling but full of something new. Hope she didn't know it yet, but he was already on his way. Export message as PDF. The cafeteria was full of noise and laughter. Alien students from many planets sitting together with their fancy food trays. But one small girl sat alone at the far end. Her clothes were torn, her skin pale, and her eyes looked tired and afraid. She was Rayleigh, a young alien girl from a colony most people didn't talk about. She had no food on her tray, only an empty cup and shaking hands. At the next table sat a human girl named Lila, her lunchbox filled with small sandwiches and fruit pieces. She watched Rayleigh quietly. The other students whispered and giggled, saying things like, "You don't go near her. She's from the Forbidden Colony." Lila didn't care. She remembered what her father always said. Kindness is free even in space. Lila stood up, her small boots tapping softly on the floor. She walked over to Rayleigh and placed half of her sandwich on the empty tray. "You can have this," she said with a smile. Rayleigh's eyes widened. She looked around nervously. Her long, thin fingers trembling, she whispered, "I can't. They'll punish me." The room fell silent. Everyone was staring now. Even the teachers at the far end of the hall turned their heads. One alien boy muttered, "Humans always think they can break the rules." Another laughed. "She's feeding a ghost child." Lila frowned, confused. Why would anyone punish you for being hungry? Before Rayleigh could answer, the cafeteria door opened, and in walked Captain Harris, Lila's father, tall, strong, with a calm but sharp look in his eyes. He was wearing his engineering jacket, still dusty from his work at the galactic dock. He was there early to pick Lila up, but when he saw her standing beside the frightened alien girl, he stopped. The guards near the door moved quickly. One of them barked, "Human child, step away from the outcast." The other guard with glowing armor added, "That creature is not allowed near clean species." The words made Rayleigh shrink even smaller in her chair. Her head lowered. Lila looked back at her father, her voice small but firm. "Daddy, she's hungry." Harris's eyes softened for a moment, then turned cold. He looked at the guards, then at the other students watching like it was a show. He walked over slowly, his boots echoing on the metal floor, each step making the room quieter. He stopped beside his daughter and in a steady voice said, "Who made the rule that a hungry child cannot eat?" No one answered. The guards exchanged glances. The teacher looked down. No one wanted to speak. Rayleigh tried to hide behind her tray, whispering, "Please don't. They'll hurt you too." Harris knelt beside her and gently pushed the sandwich toward her again. "No one here will hurt you, not while I'm standing," he said. His tone calm but dangerous. The guards stepped forward, their weapons clicking as they prepared to react. But something in Harris's eyes stopped them. He wasn't angry in the usual way. He was steady, like a man who had already seen war and didn't fear it anymore. Then the cafeteria lights flickered. The air hummed. Someone whispered, "Is he using his ship ID?" The guard hesitated, realizing who Harris was. One of the war heroes from the Orion Rebellion, a man who once faced an entire fleet alone. Harris stood straight again, holding Lila's hand. "If sharing food is a crime, then I'll stand guilty," he said, his voice deep and echoing through the silent hall. "But remember this, when the time comes, hunger will not care about your laws." The guards froze. Unsure what to do, Rayleigh slowly took the sandwich, her hands shaking, and took a small bite. It was the first real food she had eaten in days. Tears filled her alien eyes. Lila smiled, proud of her father, but she didn't realize this small act would start something far bigger. Whispers began to spread across the academy. across the city and even across the stars. No one knew it yet. But the day a little girl shared her food would change everything. Export message as PDF that night. The city lights glowed softly under the endless dark sky. Captain Harris sat in his small apartment, the same calm look on his face, but inside, his mind was storming. He couldn't forget the frightened eyes of the alien girl, Ray Lee, and the way everyone in that cafeteria looked at his daughter like she had done something wrong just for sharing food. He turned on his old terminal, the blue light flickering on his tired face. With a few quick commands, he accessed the Galactic Academy records. The screen filled with data, and then one name appeared. Ray Lee of Colony X-19. Status: Rehabilitation Worker. Harris frowned. He knew what that meant. It was just a fancy word for slave. He read more. Her colony had been punished years ago for refusing to give their minds to the Empire. Her people were branded as traitors, her parents executed, the survivors forced into labor, and somehow, one small girl ended up cleaning tables in a school full of nobles' and soldiers' children. A soft voice broke his focus. "Daddy?" Lila stood at the door in her pajamas, holding her stuffed toy. Her eyes still red from earlier, she said. They called her dirty. But she wasn't dirty. Harris turned and pulled her close. "You did the right thing, Lila. Never let anyone make you feel wrong for being kind." But Lila shook her head. "She was so scared, Daddy. She said they'll hurt her if she eats. Why would anyone do that?" Harris didn't answer. He just looked out the window at the distant lights of the Galactic Command Tower. "Because some people forget what it means to be human," he finally said softly. After Lila went back to sleep, Harris opened a private comm link. Calling an old friend, an ex-war pilot named Dax, a tired voice answered, "Harris? Haven't heard from you since the war." Harris didn't waste time. "I need information off record about the X-19 colonies." There was silence for a moment. Then Dax sighed. "You don't want that trouble. My friend, those people helped us in Orion, and the Empire repaid them with chains." Harris's jaw tightened. "I remember," he said. When the call ended, he sat in silence, remembering the war, how alien miners from X-19 had smuggled food to starving human soldiers, how they'd hidden wounded men in their tunnels, risking their own lives. He realized something cruel. The very people who once saved humans were now treated as dirt. He looked again at the file, Rayleigh's picture flickering on the screen, her small face staring straight at the camera. Scared but proud, something inside him hardened. He whispered to himself, "They fed us once. Now it's our turn." The next morning, Harris woke early, made breakfast for Lila, and packed an extra lunchbox. Lila noticed and asked, "Is that for Ray Lee?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, for Ray Lee." At the academy, whispers followed them. People watched as Harris walked straight past the guards with calm confidence. One of them sneered, "Back again, human hero." Harris didn't stop. He went to the same cafeteria table where Ray Lee sat alone again. Her tray still empty. He placed the lunchbox in front of her and said quietly, "This time, eat." Ray Lee looked terrified. "They said if I take food again, I'll be sent away." Harris leaned down, meeting her eyes. "Then they'll have to send me too." Students gasped. Cameras turned toward them again. And before anyone could stop him, Ray Lee slowly opened the box. Inside were simple sandwiches and fruit. But to her, it looked like treasure. She whispered, "Thank you," and took a bite, tears falling silently down her face. Harris didn't know it yet. But this act, this simple breakfast shared in defiance, was being recorded by every holocam in the room. And by nightfall, it would be broadcast across the galaxy, showing one man, one human, who refused to follow cruel rules, and somewhere deep inside the Empire's network, a red alert flashed on a dark screen, marking Harris's name for the first time in years. The file read, "Subject showing signs of rebellion," but Harris wasn't afraid. He had already chosen his side. And this time, he wasn't going to stand down. Export message as PDF.